Ryan, you've been doing some study about an all-important subject in this election, and that's turnout. It's an off year, non-presidential year, and turnout is very, very important. So you've brought some information with you about that. So walk us through, say, 3 charts that you've done about specific demographic groups that could be very important in this election in Florida.
Sure, I'll be glad to. You know, when in my role at Associated Industries of Florida, we try to take a look at the electorate from a clinical or almost mathematical perspective, understanding both partisan sides. But you can't deny that President Obama's 2 successful victories in Florida was determined by what we like to call the ascending electorate. These are primarily younger voters, these are minorities, and these are tend to be unmarried women for the most part. So we took the opportunity to look at the U.S. Census Bureau's reports on those groups. And what you're going to find here, looking at age first, is when you compare presidential years, 2008 and 2012, to the midterm, that was in 2010, clearly the data shows a trend where voters who are younger, that are 39 or younger, have a far more drastic decrease in their share of the electorate than their counterparts that tend to be older, which also tend to be more Republican in their behavior. The next slide that I would...
You're meaning in the off year.
That's correct.
Okay.
In the midterm, there is a much more of a drop-off of these younger voters that show up in these midterm elections that tend to be more Democrat in their behavior, absolutely.
Okay.
And then the next slide we'd point out is as we look at minority voters, you can see that from the 2 presidential years and then looking at the midterm in 2010, there clearly is once again a drop-off of Hispanic voters, somewhat with African Americans as well. Again, these are groups that are starting to behave more Democrat, explaining why the president's able to win Florida in those last 2 presidential elections. But if the Democrats can't turn those members of the ascending electorate out, it becomes a problem electorally for Charlie Crist as he...
Hold on just a sec. I want to make sure our viewers can read this poll or this chart very carefully.
Yes, sir.
You've got some highlights here or some headlines. Turnout among African Americans fell 21 points from 2008 to 2010. So you're analogizing that to the situation here where we have an off year, non-presidential year, and you're suggesting that there will be a similar fall off, if you will, or turnout from African Americans.
I would tell you that the data is suggesting that that's going to happen.
Okay,
absolutely. History is an indicator that these racial demographics or the age demographics, these are voters who tend to be Democrat in their voting behavior.
Okay.
They just have a history of not turning out as heavy in midterms.
Okay, go ahead.
And then the final slide we'd point out is with marital status. Unmarried women saw a 22-point drop in turnout from 2008 to 2010. And I think our research and then just raw voter demographic data shows that unmarried women tend to be far more Democrat in their electoral behavior than their counterparts who are married women.
All right, Sally, Scriven, reactions?
Well, I think I'll start. I think Ryan's got a good grasp of this data, and it's hard to argue it. I mean, it is clear that Democrats have had trouble turning out in off-year elections. They get all ginned up for presidentials. Those races are sexy and exciting, and when you come back to the gubernatorials, not so much, even though we could argue this one's a higher profile race than, say, 2010. But, you know, I think one of the things that I've looked at, and Ryan will correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Democrats do know this. This is not some secret, that we understand that this is all about turnout, and have focused a lot of our money, our attention, our energy on getting our base to turn out. And I think Ryan will agree that we've seen the Democrats catch up in absentee ballot requests. There's always a big gap between absentee ballot requests for Republicans and Democrats. We've closed that gap. And in voter registration, Steve, Democrats this year have been seeing a steady increase. That shows interest, that shows excitement and activity. So I'm one that doesn't believe we're going to have this big gap. You know, it may be a low turnout statewide, and I believe it will. I'm just not sure there's going to be the traditional huge gap.
But my question, if I could for just a moment, is ask you this. How do you mobilize this portion of the electorate with a candidate who's been Republican, independent, now he's a Democrat, and don't forget, we've got a president on the top of the ticket whose disapproval, his job disapproval in Florida is getting close to 60%.
You're supposed to be the data guy. You're not supposed to be throwing me shots like
Something else,
that.
though, that's interesting about this to me, which is in state elections, putting aside the presidential elections, even in presidential election years, Republicans have fared well in Florida.
Yes.
And that's because we are running competent people who solve problems. And it's not just at the governor's office level, but at the cabinet level. We have 3 members of the cabinet who are facing almost no opposition this year in their reelect because they've done a good job. And so you see Republicans not only potentially benefiting from the numbers, obviously the cycle that Ron has outlined, but we have a more effective turnout operation. We run better candidates, and we run them in every race, in every legislative race, in every cabinet race. We are running Republicans, and you're seeing results even in presidential years where Obama was at the top of the ticket and won. So I think we're in a better position overall here because of the competency of our leaders and our candidates.
Ryan, let me ask you a question about something. I know Sally and Screven will definitely want to get in on this. Screven mentioned absentee ballots, and how important is organizing an effort to get people to early vote and also to vote by absentee ballot? I mean, it's an incredible number of people who are doing that now.
It is the most important as far as I'm concerned, and it's the epitome of a field operation in today's electoral environment in Florida. What I will tell you is Screven is absolutely right that the Democrats have done a far better job of getting their base voters to request absentees. But I would like to say that that's probably only about 40% of the battle. Getting a voter to say, yes, I want to vote at my house in the comfort of my own home, that's about 40% of what you have to do. Getting that ballot to come in, that's where a little bit more work has to come in on the backside.
And that's where the Republicans have thrived. I mean, in turnout operations in the state, is their Chase program on absentees, and the work that the party here does and that the Scott campaign has done has exceeded sort of any operation we've seen in recent memory.
I agree with what Sally said, but I think we've seen it just shift. You know, I think the Obama election was the best turnout model that we've ever seen. The Democrats have learned from the mistakes of the past on these absentee ballots. I mean, Steve, you are absolutely right. It changes elections. People are voting. Sally and I have already voted, and we're sitting here at the beginning of October. So, you know, these campaigns have to start communicating and talking to these voters right now. Used to be in Florida, you could wait till the last 2 weeks. Now you're campaigning from mid-September on, and it's really completely from campaign structure and strategy changed how elections. I mean, I think Ryan said at some point 60% of the electorate maybe have turned their ballots in, have voted by Election Day.
All right, let's talk about some other issues in the election. Certainly there are a lot of them. They're important. Let me run through this very quickly, the ballot initiatives, very quickly. There are 3 proposed constitutional amendments on the ballot. Number 1 would allow for 33% of dock stamp revenue to be set aside for 20 years to purchase environmentally sensitive lands, especially wetlands land, and to manage that land. Number 2 allows the legal use of marijuana for certain medical conditions. And number 3 allows an outgoing governor to appoint Supreme Court justices and other judges who are retiring as the new governor is coming into office. Now, here's what I'd like any one of you to talk about what you sense, which ones will pass and which ones won't. Sally, you want to start?
I'll start. Well, I can tell you where my opinion lies on these ballot initiatives. I'm very worried from the state perspective on Amendment 1 about the cost to the state. Dedicating a revenue stream when there is no demonstrated need to protect this environmentally sensitive land. The state already owns 1/3 of the land of Florida and has that under protection, and through Preservation 2000 and Florida Forever programs, we've had an aggressive land buying program. It's very frightening to lock those funds down when we are a state that is hit with hurricanes and other catastrophic issues. And I think people really need to be educated about this ballot initiative and what it means. On Amendment 2, I think it is likely going to pass. I voted against it. This is an interesting ballot initiative because I think it's a place where Republicans disagree. There is a great deal of disagreement over the medical marijuana ballot initiative. As a mom, I'm concerned that it will mean easier access to kids for illegal substances, and so I'm concerned about it, but I think it is probably likely to pass. And
Are you finished?
no, I was just going to go on to 3.
No,
but
No, I think
please
it's
go ahead.
Sally.
Left, so-
Yes,
Yeah.
Sally is always very well informed and understands the issues. The problem with number 1 is there's no loyal opposition against it. The people that know about it are the people that are going to go vote for it. The environmental community, the state needs to be acquiring more lands. They're a very active group, and we didn't get to this, but it also will be interesting to see if this boosts turnout amongst, you know, Democrats or certain subgroups, these people that are turning out for Amendment 1 from the environmental community, or the young people, or people that are interested in the medical marijuana. Does that have any effect on turnout? I agree with, I think they all pass. I think 2's the one that may be the closest. But I think that 1 passes because there's no loyal opposition.
Let me get to the last question here. We haven't talked about the state legislature yet and kind of what the political environment there is. Screven, let's start with you. Big legislature, a lot of people up. What do you see as any particular race that you're looking at in either the Florida House or Senate?
Well, it's very interesting, Stephen. We have 40 members of the Senate. There's really 1 competitive race, which is in Southeast Florida, Maria Sachs and Ellen Bogdanoff, who was a former senator. It's a rematch of an election we saw in 2010. That's the one I'm following for a lot of reasons, because behind the scenes, it'll affect who's the next Senate president. Potentially, as that election goes, there's going to be millions and millions of dollars spent in that race. And I think we'll see as we watch that race sort of how the gubernatorial, there may be some effect. We watch how that race is panning out in terms of turnout, in terms of early vote, in terms of absentees, how it will look
Sally,
for the governor.
15 seconds. The Florida House.
The Florida House is doing great. It's amazing to me that, you know, we actually may be able to pick up seats in the Florida House from Democrat incumbents this year. And to my point earlier, Republicans are running good candidates in every seat, and we're continuing to win.